And we are live with Deborah Kobylt live.
Hey, Kurt, thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you for joining me for Deborah Kobylt Live today, a special edition. Joining me in her studio is Valentina Castellani Quinn. Thank you so much for being here, Valentina.
Thank you, Deborah. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely. Valentina is a friend of mine. She's also an award-winning filmmaker. One Rock, Three Religions, a beautiful film about peace in the Middle East. Also, last year, one of my favorites, Wonderful Loser, which was a candidate for Oscar for Best Foreign Film last year in 2019. You were born in Italy. You're from Italy. Your father is a professor and a surgeon, and he was head of Florence University Hospital. You live here in Los Angeles, and you go back and forth quite a bit to Italy. Thanks for joining us to lend some perspective about what's going on there in Italy.
Deborah, yes, thank you for having me. And of course, everybody saw the news and just heard Dr. Klausner, who explained very, very well the situation. It is a little bit difficult, of course, for me living in here and knowing my family is in Florence. Fortunately, is not one of the most red, alarming area in Italy. However, Italy is living in an unprecedented crisis from the time of the war. My father right now said, as a surgeon, a former head of a hospital, I never saw such crisis and so many deaths. Said that it is a very different country from the United States, and that plays in our favor. It's difficult to compare such a small country with very old, ancient, beautiful traditions that I love, I cherish. I love the fact that we live with our elders and they are such an important part of our society. However, in this very difficult situation, it is what penalized Italy so much compared to other countries where elders are a little bit protected or separated from the regular youth and society. So in this situation, as you know, many elders unfortunately are hospitalized in very serious condition and many lost their lives. And also we are a society of lovers who hugs and kiss each other very, very much.
It's impossible to stop, right? I mean, we are. I mean, we just see people and we just hug. I remember, yes. Let me just go through a little bit about when people compare and say, oh my God, not careful, we're going to be just like Italy. And you said to me on the phone the other day that that may not be the case because in Italy, it's primarily, and my family is from Italy, more southern Italy, that there's small villages and the larger hospitals are in the larger cities. So it's happening, if I'm correct, those small villages are sort of overwhelming the larger hospitals, right? Because they're really not equipped. Is this correct?
Very much so, Deborah. First of all, it was the first country, non-Asian, that got this pandemic. And so many more teachings and learning have occurred since then. Yeah. Second of all, it is true that did catch first people in the smaller villages where the factories are close by and a lot of people either from Asia or coming from there and coming back, returning to their factories were working or interacting. So areas around Milan very much, where the fashion industry, textile and so forth are very common. And this area have been, of course, affected dramatically. Now let's consider that these little villages most of the time have local hospitals for emergencies, but any patients that is a little bit more serious get sent to the main cities to do surgeries and so forth. Now imagine when 600 people per day come to the hospital for something, you know, like problem breathing and stuff. Of course, the smaller hospitals do not have the capacity to take care of all these patients, which get sent to the main hospital. And then that's where, you know, the crisis happened at that point.
Where are they today? Because I read that their numbers, even yesterday, they had over 600 deaths. The day before, I believe it was 700. It's a low number every day. And they've been pretty much sequestering home, right, for at least 2 weeks. So where do you see this with your relatives that I think what are outside of Florence, right?
My parents lives in Florence in the historical center, but they are safe. Florence hasn't been affected that dramatically like Milan, for example. However, there are many cases. However, the good part is there are less deaths and more people recovered. That's very, very important because nowadays we watch the news just to see the number of deaths and of the dead people, which anyway, it is diminishing. But let's look at the number of the people that did recover, which is much higher and is happening more and more. So I'm a positive person, but I also want to be objective that here we are turning the situation around. I also do not think that the same thing necessarily will happen in the United States. I am not a doctor. I'm just a humble human being in here, but we're all observing, and I talk with my family every day from Florence, and I hear all the stories. I also heard that, for example, the Asian community in Florence, which is a big community actually in Italy, has been basically locked down itself and separated from the rest of society. They bought a small emergency hospital outside the skirts of Florence, and they take care of themselves with their own doctors, which I think it was a smart thinking, considering all the problems, all the possible racial, craziness or whatever. They took care of themselves. They removed themselves from society. And this is what pockets of people and hospitals are trying to do. Anyway,
go ahead.
I think the situation is getting better and better every day. Yes.
That's actually very interesting. Are they also lending their doctors to the small communities in Italy that are completely overwhelmed? Like, how are they, because we know they're overwhelmed, right? The Italian hospitals and doctors who are doing a fantastic job, but there's just not enough of them. Have they also been participating in helping the Italian people there?
There is an American crew. The military hospital of the American military base in Italy has been opening their hospital for regular civilians. There is a crew from China of doctors that came to help. There is a crew from Russia that came to help. There is a crew from Cuba that came to help. And these are all specialized doctors and nurses and people with equipment that came to help. So this is very, very beautiful to see every day. I talk with my father and other people in the business of the hospital business and stuff, and they say we're receiving some more help, and that's very encouraging.
When you first started speaking to your family about a week ago, when this was just exploding,
yes,
I'm sure they were really frightened, right? And I'm sure to a certain extent they may still be, even though your father's in the medical community. It was unpredictable, right? It was just racing through the entire community.
Very unpredictable, very scary. Even my father told me, I never saw such a thing. I never saw such a thing. We don't know how it reacts. We don't know, okay, wash your hands. We all know the procedure. However, the sanitizer, as in here, we see is lacking from the stores because everybody just pack and buy everything they can. The masks, and then you don't know. There were a lot of young people that got sick too, so people get afraid. And as Dr. Klasner explained, when a population, a large number of people gets in panic, a whole government gets in panic. Right now, the restrictions are still very severe. I hear one of my sisters telling me, I went outside to do the laundry and the police stopped me. They asked me to go back home right away or I get $3,000 euros of a bill, a ticket. So that's scary, to receive this treatment.
Oh, absolutely. That's really scary. So that was not considered a necessary item, right? To go out and do your laundry. They said, get back.
Yes, get back. Another thing that they covered, for example, in the supermarkets where you can enter 5 by 5, all the shelves of non-necessary items like toys, perfume stuff, they are closed. And of course, like my sister or my friends are like, we have little kids. For them, toys, especially staying home 24 hours. Now it's been 3 weeks. Toys are necessary for us as mothers and for kids. So the rules are very, very drastic. The measures are inconceivably drastic right now, and probably it is what it was necessary, but I also think it's the result of the panic.
So now that your family and friends, and I know your family is south of the major pandemic, but still it is spread throughout the country. And as you said, Italy is pretty much what the size of California, right?
Yes, it's pretty much the size of California. So it's difficult if you really can get a vision of how big is the United States. Sometimes because we all love Italy, we talk about the arts, the fashion, the cuisine, the historical monuments, the museums. We don't realize it's a tiny little grain compared to the United States. So to use
with a big impact, yeah.
To use the same measures, it may be needed, maybe, but it looks right now not exactly, in the same balance.
Right, because it's a smaller area, a smaller country. People, as you said, my family is the same way over in Italy. They're outside of Naples, and you've got grandma living with her kids. And it's very normal. It's actually normal to me. My parents lived with us. And, then the kids live with you. And frankly, I think it's a beautiful thing. Yes. But it is a different setup than what we have here, clearly, right? So we were talking a little bit about the economic implication. You're saying you're a single mom, right? You're a filmmaker. And when everything is shut down, work is shut down, where do you see us going? Having studied what's going on in Italy, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are positive, and I want to believe that this country will start working and be put in motion much earlier. I hope that with the next month, and I hear even from other producers, other filmmakers, other people in any industry that are already booking and set up their business calendars for the next month. And I really hope that by mid-April, we can start really, if not full throttle, but sort of starting to see the business getting back in place. And I think it's needed. It's very, very important for such a country. We have a different kind of DNA and organization as a society, and that needs to be looked in perspective, and I think for this society to be working, to be creative, is very, very important. We do not live in medieval town where one side of the street is basically 1 meter away from the other. You can basically almost stretch your hand and touch your neighbor across the street, and here we're living with much bigger distances and love more isolated areas. And I think it can be possible to start working again and having a regular life, walking, going out, hiking, and so forth.
Valentina, I think also some of the panic set in this country because it seemed as though shutdowns where they said, stay in place was indefinite. Schools, for example, I mean, look at schools. They were shut down for the rest of the semester, the rest of the year. That's a long time. That goes through May, that goes through June, and you're leaving, I have a senior in college. He's just, he's still there because he has an apartment. He was studying and doing his work to prepare to be a graduate. And he's like, what do I do? Because it was long range. And I think people panicked. And I often thought, geez, why couldn't they do this or roll it out in 2-week increments and say, let's see where we are in 2 weeks. Let's see how we're doing. But that's what I thought created the panic, whether it was toilet paper or canceling businesses because no one knew where the end would be in sight, right?
Very, very much so, Deborah. I think, actually, I think it was very, very smart from the government now to give this deadline, Easter time, sort of saying, let's look at that weekend around the 12th, the 15th, the holidays, where people can start working. Because if you give a large number of people, a society, a deadline, we can all kind of envision, okay, let's get ready. Let's have hope. We can look forward to something.
That's right.
So important.
That's absolutely right. And, as but one of the issues is the president will often say, oh, I think maybe we will start to see things change by Easter because it's a good time of year. What I think would be great is if we could base it on science. Well, we've got these drugs that have been hopeful. We have curves that appear to be sliding or, leveling out. I think if he mixes it with a little bit of science and it makes people calmer, as my father always said, it starts at the top, right? And you're a businesswoman, you know that.
So much true. You read my mind, Deborah, and I'm so glad Dr. Klausner actually explain this. And yes, let's not look at Easter because it's Easter. We have to be all healthy necessarily, but drugs are in place, more experience and learning there has been since this epidemic started. People are recovering. This is a different countries. The epidemic is very much localized. So looking and keeping monitoring this situation, I think we can start to look forward to something. And I think it's actually very, very positive. One thing that scares the people in Italy right now tremendously, and I hear it from my family, from my friend, is that the government said, we don't think that the Italy can be operative until July. For people, this is such a depression, an oppression, a scare. People will go bankruptcy. They will lose their houses. They lost their jobs. They have
to that I have to say, that is important because it does lead to depression and then you're not working and then you can't pay for health or food or whatever. And that has to be built into the equation, right? I mean, it seems like everything is working in place to get us out of this. And as I said, hopefully we can look 2-3 weeks out. So gives people hope. That's what I'm hopeful for. So a couple of things. I want to talk a little bit about some of your work and upcoming projects. But before that, one final word from your family. I know you probably talked to them this morning or last night. Are they starting to feel the tension lift a little bit in the community and with people they know in the North?
Absolutely. The numbers are going down. There is more help in place. There is equipment in place, and there are new medicines that seems to be proven effective, at least partially. So this is all good news. They are starting to feel relieved. And just like any human being right now, they're hoping, okay, let's hope that within April, we can see some progress and start moving again as a society.
Look, this slapped everybody in the face, right? Nobody expected this. We're just going about our lives, and perhaps now worldwide, we will all do things differently, right? We will have pandemic relief that's in place to help people, not just our own country, but others. So I'm glad to hear that, though, about your family, Valentina. That warms my heart. Let's talk a little bit about some of your projects. I know you have one that is so fun. Would you like to talk about that? I'm looking in my notes, so hang on.
Yes, we just finished a beautiful jazz TV series that is all American. Yes.
The Knights of Swing, right?
Knights of Swings. And I like this project because it comes in a moment where America needs positivity. This is a series that we shot in period. It takes place in the 1940s in Los Angeles, which was very challenging. We shot SAG with all the best contracts and everything. And it's a story of a group of high school kids in the 1940s that creates a jazz band to overcome the aftermath of the war and the crisis with the family and society that did create. So it's actually a series that would be very much needed right now, because although we're not in the war, I don't intend to compare these two different beasts, but we are in a moment of crisis, and people always look at creativity and music, at art, filmmaking to overcome a crisis. So this is the story of the TV series itself, and it's got all original jazz music by some of the best jazz musicians. The director and the writer of the music is Emilio Palame, one of the best jazz musicians in America.
Absolutely.
He's been playing with Peggy Lee, with everybody. We have all original songs, and I can't tell you the joy and delight to shoot with a bunch of kids on set. The first day I came and I see all these kids around their 18 and stuff, playing together.
So creative, so fun. we're going to have them on our show in studio too, once we can meet again. So hopefully that'll be really soon.
Hopefully in April, everything will be best. And I can't wait to bring the cast to you. You will have a blast with them.
You know I will too. That'll be fantastic. And let's talk about the other
project I would like to talk to you, Deborah, is a film that is taking my heart, and is a documentary called The White Snake. And I'm in the process of filming it. And it's about the Native Americans and alternative energies to oil. I know we talked about it before. And of course, right now I had to stop filming because of the crisis, but I've been filming with Chief Arbol Looking Horse, which is sort of the Pope of all Native American tribes, and is absolutely an amazing human being. And that is in South and North Dakota. And then I shot with and filmed with the Six Nations reservations in Canada. And Six Nation has the youngest chief for a Native American reservation, a very young but very mature and soulful human being of 26 years old that is leading an amazing, very big reservation with very innovative and modern look into society. And I love to have this elder figure and this very young figure kind of carrying on the story.
Very much like the Italian tradition, right, Valentina? You know,
Yes.
Generations work together and they pass down traditions and all that they've learned down to the next, which is something that I hope that we get a little closer to doing in our own country, you know, pass down our traditions. I really do. What a beautiful story. I look forward to talking to the chief once you get that going. Right?
Absolutely. I will bring both the Chief Mark Hill, the young one, and Chief Arbol, the elder one. And I think there is so much to learn from these figures. It's absolutely a blessing for me to be trusted by these communities and be able to enter their society and film with them.
Well, Valentina, that's because you do your films with heart, all of them. So
Yeah.
of course they're going to trust you. I so appreciate you coming on and just lending your perspective to what's going on there. And, you know, also I was thinking a little bit about, you know, we're developing a little Italy here now. There is a little Italy here in Los Angeles. I'd love to even have you come back. We're going to be doing a podcast. How fun it would be to have you come back and talk about that.
Deborah, I would be delighted for sure.
That'd be great. Wonderful.
I love Italy, and the Italian community in Los Angeles is very warm and very united.
And we hug a lot, right? So
yes.
Thank you so much, Valentina. Valentina Castellani Quinn. You are also president of the Quinn Entertainment Studios. It carries on the legacy of Anthony Quinn, films in art and peace. And you were married to Anthony Quinn's son, who sadly passed away. But you are carrying on the tradition for the family. So thank you for doing that as well.
Thank you so much for remembering this and for appreciating my work. I love you, Deborah.
I love you back. And thank you, everybody, for listening and being here for our show. I think it's an important show to hear the perspective of what's going on there. Reading it, you've got someone who lives there part-time, firsthand with her family. So thank you for joining us for Deborah Kobylt Live. It's been an honor. And you can find our show on Facebook and YouTube. Also, Instagram, we post all of our posts there. And then if you listen to your podcast, you'll find us on iHeartRadio. You'll find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Honestly, just anywhere that you get your podcasts, you'll find us. Thank you very much for tuning in to Deborah Kobylt Live, and we'll see you next time.